Hello. Everything's okay with the sound? Thank you, Dr. Brenner. I almost wore a chartreuse dress today. I am so honored to be here to be able to share my story with you all today. Thank you to the AAMP for inviting me, to you, Dr. Brenner, for the context that you've just set this with. I feel that I know my life has been transformed truly by the experience of caring for each of my parents with a terminal illness. And I was blessed to have medical professionals to practice what you talked about, to be there and have the presence, to make the experience, while extremely difficult, watching family members suffer, to be one that I am grateful to stand here today and say was extremely fulfilling for myself. I want to call and hearken back to this diagram that Dr. Brenner presented, because for me, this accurately describes what my experience of being a family caregiver was. It highlights the fact that optimal care for a patient, which is at the center of this formula, this diagram, happens when different parties play their part. It is not one party's responsibility to manage the care, but when we each do our part, we have an opportunity to have a fulfilling experience. Dr. Brenner talked about the caregiver perspective as a clinician, or use the term caregiver from a clinician perspective. I today am going to use the term caregiver from a family caregiver perspective, informal, unpaid. Right now, there are 63 million informal, unpaid caregivers in the US, just a little over 8 million here in Canada. On any given day, that's 1 in 4, 1 in 5. The definition of family caregiver by the Canadian government is a family member, excuse me, I need some water. Is a family member or someone who is like family, taking care of somebody who has an illness, a disability, or who is aging. And just as there are as many family caregivers, there are as many unique family caregiving stories. And so I'm grateful to be here today to share mine, and hopefully you can see yourselves in my story. My objective is to expand the awareness of what it means to be a family caregiver, to give you all the opportunity to connect with your own family caregiving experiences, not just as clinicians, but also as family caregivers, because you too will have the dual role of being a caregiver for a loved one as well as a clinician. And lastly, I'm going to share some perspective on what I feel we need from clinicians. Okay, so now I'm going to start with a little short video. The tech guy is not here. One of my videos has good sound, one of my videos doesn't have good sound, so we'll try this. I'm going to set up the video. So what you're about to see is a conversation that my father and I had in the hospital 5 days after he had been admitted to the Montreal's Institute for Neurology. It's about 3 years ago. 7 days prior, he had called me and asked me to take him to the ER because he was presenting with what he thought was symptoms of a stroke. His arm was kind of floating. He had zero awareness of the right side of his body. His gait was off and his eyesight was going. So we went to the ER, and the doctors did initial tests, and anything that would have indicated he had had a stroke came back as not. So they admitted him, and on the 5th day after admission, I got the call, I was at work, to go into the hospital and sit with him and speak with the doctors so that they can discuss what they were working with in terms of their hypotheses. So this is my father and I waiting to speak with the doctors.
God forbid it is rejected.
Right.
And there's nothing we can do.
Right.
You want to be physically at home.
Yes.
And back home, you would prefer to be West Island or East Island?
Well, West Island, right, and you are there, okay? And if it's a case where I can recover and walk and talk and go a whole bit and take care of myself, like, you know, and hello, I can drive a car and everything. I want to be able to stay.
And all of your account information is there? The information about your accounts? The assets?
Well, I thought I had made a list, but I didn't.
Okay.
So I'll give you,
Give it to me. We give it to me now, Liz?
I'll give it to you, like, you have to bring me the passwords,
Okay.
and we'll go through, I'll show you the account, and now, understand,
Yes.
assist, suicide,
Yes.
that kind of vegetable.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm blind, I can't walk, I can't hear, if I'm just dumb.
Right.
But as long as I can think, and talk, and you understand,
Yes.
no assistance.
Okay. Now,
Suicide.
If they can confirm that you can hear,
Yeah.
but you cannot react or respond, if they can confirm that there's somehow auditory, you can hear you talking,
Right.
don't do anything.
You may want to talk to me.
Of course, I just want to make sure I'm following through with what you want,
Yeah.
because I just want to talk to you.
That's
If
it.
you don't want to be around because of the sense of the frustration that your body cannot react, or your mind wants it to do, I don't want to force you in a situation if you can't.
If I can react, if you can ask me questions, and somehow we can find a way of communicating that I will respond.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Now, in the event that you can't communicate, and you pass away, you pass away,
Yeah.
and all of your assets to be handled with.
You did take your blood pressure, but remember I got you more ice?
You're right.
Okay.
I have the memory problem, but I think.
Okay, no problem. Were you?
No.
Yeah, you're Cynthia. Yes. So did the doctors come out?
Well, yeah, I saw the doctor in the cafeteria,
Okay.
and so she said it's good that you're here, we're gonna come talk to you guys later.
You guys, is your wife here?
No, she's not coming, she has told me.
Okay, they were hoping to talk to the little baby. Okay.
Well, we could put on speaker.
Yeah, we can call.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, they wanted to meet you in person
Okay.
and then discuss it.
Okay.
Yeah, so which is why I just thought about it, they're like, we could talk here in person.
As you can see, the caregiver's journey starts even before diagnosis. And sitting with my dad and understanding what his goals were, what his wishes were, I had learned through previous experience I needed to know soon so that I could help be a partner in the care equation. And my caregiving journey didn't start there. It actually started 7 years prior with this woman. This beautiful, vivacious, full of life woman was my mom, and I had the pleasure of being raised by her. So to understand truly being a caregiver and what my caregiver journey was, we have to start from my very beginning with both of them. I was born in the 80s to big hair and shoulder pads. I'm from Italian-Canadian descent, and I was born to two parents who came from extremely humble means. They instilled strong family values in both my sister and I, and even despite getting divorced, made sure that our family unit stayed intact. Both of my parents worked extremely hard to give us more than they had. My father was in foreign exchange for about 30 years, and my mother, with only a high school leaving diploma, started her own business in personal recruitment. I can remember the sound of my father's briefcase clicking in the morning and at night when he would come home from work, and I knew I was going to grow up to be a businesswoman. I never not wanted to work. This was something that was instilled in me. And so I set off on a journey of educating myself. I got a couple of degrees, one in marketing, one in journalism. I worked in tech. I worked in a media room for a bit. And ultimately, I found my place in project and program management and was working for an aerospace company. And at 34 years old, at this aerospace company, was the first time I had experienced a life career interruption due to family caregiving. It ripped me from my life. On a Wednesday, the day after my mother's routine blood work, my mother had called me to accompany her to a doctor's appointment on a Friday afternoon. My mother had had bladder cancer 2 years prior, stage 2. Things seemed to have been cleared, and she was going through these routine follow-ups every 6 months. I thought nothing of it, but what we found out that Friday afternoon was that my mother's cancer had returned and metastasized in her bladder, in her bones, in her lungs, and in her brain. We were all in shock. And looking outwards, I can see my mother's face from her neck up. She was stoic. She was receiving all of the information. But from the neck down, she was shaking. Her entire nervous system had kicked into overdrive. For myself, I had never dealt with anything like this before, and so I was just in complete shock and denial, and truly I was in ignorance. And as we walked out of that hospital room, I didn't know what to think, but the one thing I did think, this feeling, this fire in the pit of my stomach, was that I needed to be there by her side. We had been given an idea that she was not going to make it longer than about 12 months. And for me, I saw this as an opportunity. I wasn't married at the time, I had no kids, and so I moved home to be with her. In the beginning, it was easy. My mother didn't look sick, she didn't act sick, she had a very strong personality, and so she was the one who made all of the decisions about her care. And I, like the dynamic that we had, was able to just follow her and accompany her. I was able to juggle work and care, and I was able to ultimately fulfill my duties of what I thought it meant to be a caregiver. But after about 3 months, that's when my mother suffered a pleural effusion when one of her lungs had filled with water, and that's when everything changed. She was hospitalized, and I had to be by her side. And this was the moment that smacked me in the face in terms of what it really meant to be a caregiver. I was terrified, I was devastated, and now my world had been thrown from the axis. Because the woman that I was so used to following my whole life was now laying in a bed next to me, still trying to make decisions, but incapable because she was suffering so physically. And now I had to step up. Not to mention, we were literally living day by day, day to day. And so this big career that I was working on, that I had built, this position I was in at this aerospace company, I had to call my boss every single day and say, it's gonna be tomorrow, it's gonna be tomorrow. And I felt this mounting pressure of this team, the weight of the team that I had at work on me, while also trying to be there for my mom. We lived day to day, and my mother's goal was ultimately just to get home. Because home meant relief. Home meant, okay, we're not as sick anymore. And that was the goal. It also, for me, meant it was going to be relief because I could go to work and come back and family members would be there and we could juggle all of the responsibilities. But the reality is after a month when we did get home, a whole new set of problems came. And we were not prepared for it. I was not prepared for it. My mother had an extreme level of anxiety. Why? Because we weren't just sitting around and when there was something that would happen, we could press a button and a medical professional would come by. No, now we were the ones who had to decide how critical an anxiety symptom was, or how critical my mother's blood pressure was, or how critical a medical symptom appeared, and I didn't have any training for that. The other thing was I had to set up my house so that my mother could have an oxygen machine. I'd never worked with an oxygen machine before. Then I had to make sure to coordinate her medications. I had to administer the medications. I had to be the go-between all the health professionals, all the while still trying as well to carry a job. One of the biggest things that happened to me was the fact that family members didn't step up the way that I expected them to. And this was devastating. It was isolating, and I didn't know what was happening. I was cooking the meals, I was taking my mother to her appointments, and I was trying to hold down the fort, and really my life felt like it was falling apart. And then almost fortuitously, 3 things happened that shifted my perspective, that shifted how I believed my role needed to be. And that was one, my manager called me and he said, look, Cynthia, you know in Quebec, there's a program that says that where you're taking care of somebody with a terminal illness, you can take a year off and you'll be either guaranteed your position or a position of the same level. You won't have a job, you won't have a salary, but at least you'll have the job to go back to. And then a girlfriend of mine said, you know, Cynthia, there's a government program with Canada that says that if you are caring for somebody with a terminal illness, you can receive a monthly stipend and you can get some money from the government. And then there was a social worker at one of my mother's chemo appointments who pulled me inside and he said, Cynthia, your mother is handing the baton to you. And now it's your turn to take her the rest of the way. And in that moment, being recognized by my employer, being recognized by the medical system, being recognized by my support group and the government made me realize that I had a place and I belonged in this conversation and I was going to do everything to do it right. So I put my project manager hat on and I became a boss. And I managed my mother's care like a boss. Rosalind Carter has a famous quote about family caregivers. And she says there's 4 kinds of people in this world. People who've been caregivers, people who are caregivers, people who will be caregivers, and people who will need caregivers. And I think that the framework that I have found that most accurately represents the breadth of work and responsibility on a caregiver's shoulders is this one, the 6 Stages of Caregiving by Denise Brown. Each stage, expectant, freshman, entrenched, pragmatic, transitioning, and Godspeed, is characterized each by a different word that really highlights what the caregiver's responsibility is in that phase, to either ask, to find, to receive help, to welcome, to allow, and to treasure. Now, I only have about 10 minutes left, so I'm not going to go into what each one of these things is. But the reality is that these aren't necessarily linear. These aren't linear. And depending on where, something's happening. Depending on where we are in the caregiving journey, and depending where the caree is in their health journey, it will demand different things of the caregiver. And you can go back and forth. So when we sit in a doctor's office and the doctor says, okay, this is now what we're dealing with from a health perspective, that then dictates what I need to do and what my role is. Do I feel comfortable with where I'm at right now, or do I have to go learn more? How is this going to complicate the entire experience of care? No, that's what I was waiting for. So yeah, to show how we can go back and forth. The other thing that I want to highlight is that caregivers often feel so completely overwhelmed and blindsided by the caregiving responsibilities, because really the 2 only major organizations or the 2 factions that are talking about caregiving right now are healthcare and the government. And let's face it, from a government perspective, people don't really want to pay attention to the government. They don't have a great relationship with the government, so whatever the government says is like, meh. And then from a healthcare perspective, the reality is that healthcare can't talk to us about the financial burdens. Healthcare can't talk to us about what it's like to deal with Aunt Betty, who is screaming in your ear, telling you, you should be doing this, and Dr. Google says that. But that's what we deal with as family caregivers every single day. 19 different systems that we are interacting with. I'll give you an example. A simple trip to get chemo in the middle of winter in Quebec means I have to decide, or I have to look at, what are the weather systems? What's the traffic going to be like? Is there going to be a wheelchair at the hospital? Who is going to be in line? It's just the weather system, the climate system, who's going to accompany me, who am I going to have to update on what's going on with how my mother's procedure is going? All of these different systems are weighing on your shoulders. Using my own iceberg. What we see and what we think caregiving is symptom management. It's appointment management. It's medications and logistics and treatments. But what's happening under the surface, to Dr. Brenner's point, impacts how we, the family, are going to show up, how we, the caregivers, are going to show up, how we, the patients, are going to show up. And sometimes it's really challenging. We show up with resentment, we show up with anger and confusion, but we also sometimes show up with strategy, and we show up fulfilled, and we show up with nostalgia. Caregiving truly is this balance of doing and being. And the more comfortable we can get with the doing, the more we can allow for the opportunities that lie in the being. My mother died 11 months after diagnosis. And while I had the systems in place and I was managing everything like a boss, it was extremely, extremely difficult. And all I wanted to do after she passed away was to live. I did not want to face her death. I did not want to face anything that I had just been through, because watching people that you love suffer is so difficult. Then I got pregnant, and I decided, okay, also like Dr. Brenner, in terms of having motherhood inform how I want, or inform my life, I decided that I was going to face my grief and I was going to face everything I'd been through. So through EFT tapping and CBT and wellness therapy and yoga and all of that, what I came to realize is that I was controlling everything so much because I was in so much fear of losing my mom. I, yes, was bossing my way through it, but it was because I could not face my mother's death. I couldn't even say the word death and dead. My mother was at the end of her life, and it was that allowed me to keep going. Caregiving is actually a lot about letting go. It's letting go of expectations that you have out of life. It's letting go of the dynamics with family that you once had. It's letting go of dreams that you have for yourself. And it's letting go of expectations of people, of health conditions and health systems. It's letting go of your identity. But when you let go, you also have the opportunity to let in. And there's a beauty to life. And so the 3 lessons that I took away truly from caregiving were that, 1, it's not the sole responsibility of any one person to care or save someone else. 2, your presence is your truly greatest gift. And 3, we are where we're supposed to be. If life were meant to be any other way than it is, then it would be. So the sooner we can come to acceptance, the less we resist, the sooner we're able to let things in. And I was able to be there with my father with these lessons in hand, where we ultimately learned that he did have a disease called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which was a neurological disease that took his life within 4 weeks. Armed with the lessons and the experience and the healing that I had with my mom, I was able to go into the doing, this time not from fear, but from power, knowing that there were going to be an opportunity for beautiful moments if I just let other people in. If I got the lay of the land, but I also took my hands off the wheel a little bit and let other people in. I was ready to do my part, knowing that there are other people and other parties available to do theirs. Okay, I'm almost done, I promise. So, what do we need from clinicians? Well, if I were standing here in front of a HR association, which I've been known to do, because my company, Monarch Solutions, is about bringing the employer to the table, I would tell them how incredible it is and how important it is to support their employees who are juggling work and care, because of the skills that we develop, because of how amazing we actually become through the caregiving process, and how the benefits can be reaped financially through the bottom line. But for you clinicians, here's what we need. We need leadership. And not leadership in the perspective of telling us what to do, although sometimes that's welcome, but leadership in your presence. The way that you show up sets the tone for all of us. It sets the tone for how we're going to walk out of that room and how we feel we're going to get through this. The second thing is perspective. You have the context. We don't have the context. And without context, our brains are going to probably go to the worst case scenario. So providing us with that context helps us situate how this is going to shift in our lives. Permission. Permission to be there. Permission to process, to feel, Give us parameters. You know, maybe we don't want to make the decision right now because we're in shock or we have reasons for that. Give us permission to process or to at least go through this. Because as I said, I feel blessed that in my journey, I was able to have medical professionals to support me and support our family because I did get so much out of the experience. Lastly, we need partnership. Just as there are so many unique stories of caregivers, not every situation is going to ask of you to involve the family caregiver, but we often have context that can help you make your decisions better. And so this partnership helps give us a sense of purpose, and it helps to calm the chaos and give us the courage to do the things that we need to do, and ultimately open up the opportunity to have tough but necessary conversations that are going to help us through the rest of our lives.
And, okay. And yeah, you want money spent on me? Okay, this is a question, and you don't have to answer right now. If I'm going to leave everybody with a message, that you want to leave people with, and you don't have to answer it right now. Daddy says he wants you to remember him by or as this. How do you want to be remembered? You don't have to answer it.
Thank you.